Hello, I'm Debbie from So Easy. Welcome. This is my new serger, the Brother 1034D, and I'm just really feeling my way around it now and getting to grips. And the first thing I want to do is change out my threads. Now, of course, there's two ways. You can either entirely unthread it and rethread it again from fresh, or today we're just going to do a cheater method. So if you've got your new serger and everything's working fine and it's time to change your threads and you're really worried, you think, well, if I don't thread it correctly it's not going to work, well then just go for the cheater method and we can always concentrate on threading it properly later on. So you'll need your threaded serger, your 4 new spools of thread, some snips or scissors, and either your tweezers or whatever threading tool came with your serger, and then we'll start. So the first thing to do is to snip all of the threads, and I'm going to leave myself a nice long thread tail, so I'm going to snip off each right at the cone and then take all the old cones off and leave the threads hanging down, so they're still through my bar at the top and they're snipped just at the cone, and then we can put our new cones of thread in place. Oops, to redo that one. Okay, and now we need to tie our new thread to our old thread. So the old thread is still through the bar at the top, and I've got my new thread here in my right hand. It depends whether you're right or left-handed, but we're going to attach these two threads together with a square knot, or called a reef knot if you're in the UK. So I like to keep an eye on my new thread, and the new thread is the one that I'm going to be tying the knot with. So I'll get a couple of spools here and we'll just practice here before we actually do it on the machine, so you can see the type of knot that I'm sewing. So I've got my 2 threads. The cream one is the thread that was in the machine before. The grey one is going to be the new one. So I'm going to keep track of the grey one, make sure I've got plenty to work with. So my grey one goes over, so we're doing right over, and then if I hold the left one down, I'm going to wrap that grey thread around the cream one twice. Both ends still end up at the same place, and the grey thread is wrapped over and round twice and out here. So that's the first half of the knot. The second half, if I pull it out, again I'm keeping track of my grey thread. That's my new one, that's the one I want to keep a track of. And it's a bit fiddly to show this, isn't it? And I'm going to put that one over the cream, and I'm going to wrap it twice around that cream thread. So that's what it looks like when it's loose. Both of the threads are still up at the top, and I've got the thread looped twice here and twice here. And now if I pull those top ones, this knot is going to tighten up. And I'll just pull both sides. So now that's my square knot, and you can give it a tug to make sure that it's nice and strong. And so that's what I'll do on all 4 threads. I'll tie the grey to the existing cream with a square knot on all 4. So the 4 knots are now sewn up at the top. Next step is to open up all the tension. I've got my tension settings here ready for sewing, and if you need to, make a note of those so that you can put them back next time. And now we're going to loosen the tension. So on mine, on this Brother, set them all to 0, and that loosens the tension on all of these, and that will allow our knots to come through a lot easily. And now the method number 1 is just to sew. So if I pull my presser foot over, and as we sew we'll be able to see the threads being pulled through the machine. So the looper threads are going to come through first, because the looper threads go backwards and forwards and they use a lot more thread. So even if we've tied them the same, the loopers will turn up here first of all. So as you can see, my chain has changed from cream to partly grey. but my needle threads at this point are still cream, and we want to keep an eye on that because as the knots come through, if we try and get the knot through the eye of the needle, it's going to be too small. It's probably going to either jam or even break the needle, break the thread, and then we'll be back in a difficult position. So I'm going to just watch the thread as it comes through, and when I see the grey coming down here to the point of the needle threads, I'm going to stop. So I can sew a little bit more now, and let's see if we can follow those grey threads through coming on the needle. So I'm just seeing my grey threads coming down through the needles here now. So if I lift up my presser foot, one is through, the other one isn't. There we go, I've got that one as well now. So now if I just pull these out of the way, I'm going to take my presser foot off because I always find it easier to thread the needle with that taken off. So I'm just going to pull these a little bit more, so I've got plenty of grey coming through. I'll snip those off, pull the threads out the back of the needles for the cream threads because those are already finished. Actually, if I snip the knots off, that will help too, because we don't want the knots going through the needle. That's it, so those cream threads are now free, and I've got my needle threads just here. Now we need to know which is our left and right needle thread, so I'm just going to take both and wrap them back to here, and straight away now I can see which is my left and right needle, so I can now thread these ones. I can pull them back up here and rethread my needles here. If I lift them up to the highest point, I've got my left and right needle thread ready, and I'll pull those and rethread them. So I've got my looper threads just here. I've got my 2 new needle threads here. Just going to pull them through, make sure everything is pressed nice and flat, and it's time to put the presser foot on. So I'm going to make sure the threads stay underneath the presser foot off to the side. Clip the presser foot back on, and now I'm ready to resew. Here's my chain. So everything is now made with the grey thread. Now I need to just go back up and set my tensions back as they were before. And there we go, my new thread, and everything is all done without the need to actually rethread the machine from the start. So that's option number 1. Let's have a look now at option number 2. So for option number 2, we're going to get up close and personal with the inside of the machine this time. So I've started off at the top exactly the same as before. I've got my cream threads already here. I've got my grey cones on the top, and I've tied them all off with the square knot. Then I'm going to open up my tension discs so that the tension is on minimum. Now normally with a sewing machine you could just pull on your thread tails over here and you'd be able to pull the threads through the machine, but that doesn't work on a serger because the threads are all not exactly caught up, but they're wound together at this point just here to create this special kind of stitch. So we need to just take care of those so that we can pull the threads all through manually. I'm going to show you how to do that now. I'll see if I can zoom the camera in so that you can see exactly what I'm doing. Okay, so to undo all these stitches, the first thing I'm going to do, raise the presser foot and just take that out of the way. And then if you look just in here, you can see all these stitches, and this little bar on the right hand side, this is called our stitch finger, and we'll take that out too. You don't have to, but I'm just going to find it easier to show you if I do that. So there's a little clip at the bottom, and I can just pull that bar out of the way. And now if I give a little tug, you can see just in here, if you look very closely on yours, there are a couple of pins that run at the back, and these are where the stitches form. So we're going to need to pull the stitches off of those pins. So I'll start by raising up my needles to their highest point. And when I do that, you can see the 2 loopers. So we have our upper looper here and our lower looper down at the bottom. And if you look, the thread on the lower looper crosses over this curved bar at the top. So that's the first one we can take care of. That one from the lower looper will just take off of here. So those 2 are now not attached. Let's give it a little tug. And then we've got our threads at the back that come off of these 2 pins. So I need to get a little slack. So I'm just going to pull a little bit of slack on those needle threads, and once I do that you can see how it comes off the back just here, but these two needle threads are attached around that lower looper. Let's see if I can do it left-handed. No, that's not going to work. See if I could get out the way of the camera. So these two threads here I need to take with my tweezers underneath the two pins, and then suddenly you can see here they're now looped around this lower looper. So I take the two again and just pull them off the lower looper, and if I give a little tug now on my thread chain, take them all the way off that lower looper, and now suddenly everything is going to run smoothly, and you can pull on all these threads and they'll pull through like a sewing machine does. So if I clip my thread chain off the way, so I've now got 4 individual threads. So let's see, this one is the lower looper. I can see because as I pull it, it comes through this part here. So as I pull this thread, I'm going to get that knot come all the way through. Here comes my grey, and out the other side. I'll give that one a snip, so that's that one taken care of. Then let's do our upper looper. So when I pull this thread, this is the one that goes through the hole just here, that's the upper looper. And as I pull it, I can see the knot and the new thread coming through. The knot goes through the eye, and here's my grey threaded in the upper looper. Exactly the same now for our needles. I can pull those through, but of course remember we don't want the knots to pull through the eye of the needle. So as it gets to this point, I'm just going to make sure I've got plenty of slack there, and then I'm going to cut these threads, and each one individually I'll just rethread through the needle, and then that will be our 4 threads done. So I'll just rethread my needles and we'll see that everything's working properly. So we need to put back in place the pieces that we took out. Here's the stitch finger. You see it has little orange arrows, and there's an orange arrow down here. So I just slide that in. There's a little button at the bottom. And if I press the button, slide the bar in and match up those arrows, and then that stitch finger's back in place. We need to put our presser foot back on. And for the presser foot, I want to make sure that all 4 of the threads are going to be pulled out the way and under the presser foot. So I'm just going to hold those off to the side, lift up the presser foot bar, put the presser foot in place, and that will keep those threads underneath. Give it a little clip, the presser foot's back on, and our threads are now still all underneath. And then I can close up my cover and let's sew. So at the moment it's all loosey loopy, so I'm going to tighten up my tension discs. And there we go, my serger's now threaded with my grey threads again. So those are the 2 methods for changing the threads on the serger if you don't want to completely unthread it and do it again from scratch. I hope that's been useful, and I'll follow up hopefully with a complete threading video very soon. Thank you very much for watching.